On this Friday night, the backlog before Christmas. How some couriers can't handle the boom in business caused by the Canada Post strike.
Their capacity is not unlimited.
The consequences for merchants and consumers. Canada's rising unemployment. What it might mean for interest rates. Justice for women who were murdered because they're women. The growing calls to add femicide to Canada's criminal code. New evidence. What New York police have learned as they try to catch a killer on the run. Plus, Vancouver's era.
We're all very, very lucky to watch her tonight.
The Taylor Swiftonomics, adoring fans, and police preparations.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Carolyn Jarvis.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. Businesses and customers across Canada are being handed another holiday hit as the busiest shopping season of the year is in high gear. Some shipping companies like Purolator and UPS now say they're stretched to the limit after picking up the slack from the Canada Post strike and are temporarily suspending certain shipments. The move will only worsen an already monumental backlog of deliveries across the country. And for some small businesses, it could make surviving the holiday season even more stressful. Kyle Benning has tonight's top story.
For Montreal cookie business Felix and Norton, the Canada Post strike could not have come at a worse time. Tens of thousands of orders, which were set to be loaded on Purolator trucks, are now in need of a new ride.
You're literally telling me that I'm going to have to start a new business relationship with different companies on the 10th of December.
Purolator says due to severe weather and increasing volumes, it's freezing some shipments. In a statement to Global News, the company says it decided to temporarily pause service from some of its partners, including third-party platforms. The backlog adding up, with the Courier saying the freeze ensures the integrity of its network and that it's prioritizing critical deliveries. The labor dispute, now starting its fourth week, is seeing plenty of spillover for shipping companies looking to transport the 2 million daily packages left by Canada Post. UPS also announcing it will pause some Canadian deliveries. And last week, the U.S. Postal Service announced it would no longer accept mail bound for north of the border.
Couriers, well, they appreciate some additional business, but their capacity is not unlimited.
It comes as the public is feeling split about the strike. Earlier this week, Angus Reid released a poll suggesting more than a third of people signed with the Crown Corporation in this labor dispute, while just shy of 3 in 10 say they support the union. But the longer that goes on, the more those feelings can shift.
The people who are on strike tend to get a little bit more of the ire if it starts to impact more people.
While Felix and Norton have organized a jumbled solution of couriers to get their treats out the door, they're hoping this holiday season won't end up tasting bittersweet.
Many businesses, they just probably won't be able to ship or get their customers anything by Christmas, which is more tragic than anything else.
Kyle Benning, Global News, Toronto.
Some more bad news for Canada's economy with the latest job numbers released today. According to Statistics Canada, unemployment saw a surprising jump to 6.8% in November. That drove the loonie down to just shy of its weakest level this year. Mackenzie Gray dives into the new numbers and what they could mean for next week's Bank of Canada interest rate announcement.
It's the latest sign of a slowing economy. Excluding COVID, unemployment hitting its highest level in 8 years.
Canada's gone from pretty strong labor market conditions back in 2022, early 2023, to today where things definitely aren't so great.
But it was a strong month for hiring. Over 50,000 jobs were added, double what analysts expected. But when you look at the details, things are less encouraging. 90% of new hires came from the public sector, and the number of people who lost their job or are looking for work went up by 87,000, bringing the total number of job seekers to 1.5 million nationally.
We have a large population growth happening right now, but the strength of businesses hiring remains.
That growth coming from immigration, which the Liberals are planning to reduce substantially, despite the minister responsible having said it helped keep Canada out of a recession.
That volume is one that on this particular point of time has been very aggressive. It's contributed to keeping us out of a recession.
But the former Bank of Canada governor believes we're already there. In a speech earlier this week, Stephen Poloz said, "I would say we're in a recession. And the only reason it hasn't showed up in the data, according to Poloz, is because we've been swamped with new immigrants who buy the basics in life, and that boosts our consumption enough. An assessment the finance minister disagrees with.
With your government's significant immigration reduction, should Canadians expect that Canada will enter a recession?
No.
The soft labour market likely to lead to further interest rate cuts from the Bank of Canada, with markets predicting an upcoming 50 basis point slash.
The economy has gotten soft enough that it looks like interest rates are higher than they need to be.
The Bank of Canada won't need to wait long to deliver interest rate relief, Carolyn, with their last rate announcement of 2024 scheduled for next Wednesday.
Mackenzie Gray in Ottawa, thank you. The federal government embarked on a new frontier today, launching its Arctic foreign policy. Trudeau's Liberals will appoint an Arctic ambassador and create 2 diplomatic posts in Alaska and Greenland to boost Canada's presence in the north and increase security against foreign threats. As David Aiken reports, the blueprint also emphasizes Indigenous teachings and values.
When Norway announced earlier this year it would double its defense spending, it cited a newly aggressive Russia in the Arctic as the reason for the extra money. Canada is not doing anything so dramatic, but a new Arctic foreign policy is a response to increased Russian Arctic activity, often supported by an expansionist China.
The Arctic is no longer a low-tension region. We live in a tough world, and we need to be tougher.
Canada's Arctic foreign policy complements an updated defense policy that will put more military and diplomatic assets north of 60.
Russians have tens of thousands of military in the Arctic region, and they've been running joint military exercises with China.
The foreign policy commits Canada to increase north-to-north ties with the U.S. and Alaska and with Nordic nations like Norway, Sweden, and Finland. It promises strengthened research capacity, improved information with local and Indigenous government on developing security threats.
Safeguarding Arctic sovereignty and security goes hand in hand with advancing opportunities for Northerners.
The policy has been crafted with and for the Inuit, First Nations, and Métis people of the North.
When the Canadian government goes out into the diplomatic space in our international community, too often Indigenous peoples have been completely left behind or just not considered at all. This Arctic foreign policy helps change that. It's a sea change.
This policy, as was acknowledged, can and must include the rights holders.
Ottawa will support this new foreign policy by spending about $35 million this year and then $7 million a year for the next 5 years. David Aiken, Global News, Ottawa.
35 years ago today, a gunman walked into a class of engineering students at Montreal's École Polytechnique and targeted women, killing 14 of them. Annie Ross survived. She's now a mechanical engineering professor at École Polytechnique. A last-minute decision to skip class that night in 1989 likely saved her life.
The first thing that came to my mind is calling home. Calling home to my parents in New Brunswick and letting them know, no, you're going to hear something on the media. Don't worry, I'm home.
At an annual ceremony in Montreal tonight, 14 beams of light, one for each of the victims, lit up the sky. And this year, for the first time, a 15th beam was added to remember all victims of femicide around the world. Femicide is still not enshrined in the Criminal Code of Canada. Heather Yorks-West reports on the push to change that.
1 month after tragedy struck this BC community, the people of Trail took to the streets, walking to bring domestic violence out from the shadows, in memory of a local nurse, mother, and friend.
Lindsay was the mom that we would all wish for our own small children. Nothing in her life came close to the love that she had and still has for her son.
Lindsay Dancella's estranged husband has been charged with second-degree murder, a death a growing number of advocacy groups in Canada say should be considered femicide under the Criminal Code.
They would assure that offenders who kill women and girls receive sentences that are proportionate to the severity of the offense, and that prosecution of those offenses could consider evidence that the offender was motivated by hate
According to the Canadian Femicide Observatory, nearly 200 women and girls die by violence across the country every year, a number that increased significantly during and after the pandemic.
Indigenous women, Black women, racialized women experience some of the most precarity with respect to vulnerability to violence, gender-based violence, but also femicide.
It's why one of the calls to action in the 2019 report on missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls called for a criminal code amendment to consider violence against Indigenous women as an aggravating factor at sentencing. Pressure is also mounting to introduce femicide-specific laws around the world, particularly in Latin America and the Caribbean, where rates of violence against women are especially high. Laws have been adopted in Costa Rica, Cyprus, and in Croatia, where convictions come with a minimum 10-year prison term. Harsher penalties advocates hope could one day save women's lives here in Canada. Heather Yurex, West Global News, Calgary.
The mission to find a murderer. Coming up, how police are piecing together the clues in the deadly shooting of a health insurance CEO. Plus, electrified, the Pope gets new wheels. Crews in Pennsylvania have found the body of a woman who's believed to have fallen into a sinkhole above an abandoned coal mine. 64-year-old Elizabeth Pollard was last seen alive looking for her cat on Monday. It's believed she fell into a 9-meter-deep chasm. Investigators are now trying to determine whether the mine is linked to the ground's instability. The NYPD is intensifying the hunt for the man wanted in the shooting death of a U.S. healthcare executive, Brian Thompson. The killer has been on the loose since Wednesday, and investigators now believe he's left New York. They also say he used fake ID with a phony name to check into the hostel at the center of the case. Eric Sorensen reports.
Every type of technology is being used to locate the gunman. Cameras across New York have provided additional snippets of his movements before and after the shooting of health insurance executive Brian Thompson. A DNA sample from the crime scene, reportedly from a water bottle, is now being tested.
It could be some sort of physical evidence, a fingerprint, maybe even some sort of DNA that they can trace.
Police have gathered evidence at this hostel where the person of interest stayed. Experts are examining whether facial recognition could identify who this man is, who lowered his mask, reportedly flirting with the clerk at the hostel.
We're on the right path, and we believe we're going to apprehend this person.
The hostel is located on New York's Upper West Side, about 3 kilometers from the site of the shooting, down in Midtown Manhattan. At a Starbucks at 6:17 a.m., he was spotted on a security camera 5 blocks from the New York Hilton Midtown. At 6:19, he was seen walking down West 55th Street towards the Hilton where Brian Thompson was scheduled to speak. At 6:45 a.m., outside the hotel, the gunman shot Thompson in the back. He immediately fled down a passageway back to West 55th, then seen on a bike heading up the Avenue of the Americas. At 6:48, the suspect was spotted riding his bike into Central Park. The victim was rushed to Mount Sinai West Hospital, 8 blocks from the shooting. At 7:12 a.m., he was pronounced dead, less than 30 minutes after he was shot. Experts doubt it was a professional hit.
I wouldn't call this person a professional. Professionals, hitmen, assassins, they're in and out. They're not there to have a coffee before.
Writing on the shell casings may be a clue. Deny, defend, depose, words used to criticize insurance companies that avoid paying out claims.
The words on the casings, without a doubt, point towards a possible motive.
In the end, a key clue may be this unguarded moment that shows more of his face, apparently asked by the clerk at the hostel to lower his mask and smile. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
3 missing climbers, including a Canadian, are now presumed dead on New Zealand's highest peak. The Canadian's identity has not been released at the request of his family. The other 2 were Americans, Kurt Blair and Carlos Romero. Authorities believe the trio fell to their deaths based on footprints found by search teams. Their bodies haven't been found and search operations have been suspended. Last week, the climbers began ascending Aoraki, also known as Mount Cook. They were reported missing days later when they missed their flight. One of Australia's largest synagogues was set on fire overnight in what its Prime Minister has condemned as an anti-Semitic attack. Witnesses say they saw 2 masked men spreading a liquid accelerant with brooms and lighting it. Worshippers who gathered for early morning prayers fled as the sanctuary built by Holocaust survivors 60 years ago went up in flames. One person was injured. Australia has seen a rise in anti-Semitic attacks since Israel began its war against Hamas in Gaza. Pope Francis got a look at his new vehicle today, and for the first time, the popemobile is electric. The drivetrain has been adapted to accommodate the low speeds required for public appearances, and the swiveling main seat is elevated so crowds can see the Pope. There's also plenty of bulletproof glass. Mercedes-Benz has been supplying cars to the Vatican for 94 years.
I'm Redmond Shannon in Paris. It took 5 years and around $1 billion. On Saturday, Notre Dame's renovation is revealed to the world. We'll take you inside tomorrow on Global National.
In Syria, rebel forces appear to have put Bashar al-Assad's regime on the ropes in a major shift for the country's years-long civil war. Rebels are now on the verge of taking another major city and are inching closer to Syria's capital. Vincent McAvaney reports.
A dormant war that's reignited at an astonishing pace. These fighters with Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, known as HTS, alongside other rebels, having captured the cities of Aleppo and Hama, are on the verge of taking Homs, the country's third biggest city. To give a sense of HTS's rapid progression, at the beginning of the week, they and aligned rebels controlled the area in blue. But in the past few days, meeting little resistance, this coalition has redrawn the map, expanding their territory, with capital Damascus now in their sights. Tonight, they're on the outskirts of Homs. If they were to take the strategically important city, that would put them right on the main highway to President Bashar al-Assad in Damascus. Speaking to CNN, HTS's leader is confident they can overthrow the regime.
The Iranians attempted to revive the regime, buying it time, and later the Russians also tried to prop it up. But the truth remains, this regime is dead.
But the regime might receive support from two old allies, Russia and Iran-backed Hezbollah, whose attentions towards Ukraine and Israel have enabled this rapid rebellion.
There will be a significant risk that the regime then is likely to fall, and you will see an unraveling in its authority very fast.
Events this week have driven tens of thousands from their homes, creating a dire humanitarian situation, sparking long traffic jams at crossings to neighbours like Jordan, and prompting Israel to redeploy soldiers to its border with Syria. Tonight, HTS are making a last call for the Syrian army to defect. The Middle East is already facing considerable instability. Now, with the possibility of regime collapse, the regional and global impact of the potential fall of Bashar al-Assad is demanding attention once again. Carolyn?
Vincent McAvaney in London for us tonight. Thank you. It's the last stop on the biggest concert tour of all time. Taylor Swift hits the stage in Vancouver tonight. We take you there next. Taylor Swift takes the stage tonight in Vancouver in the final stop of her record-setting concert tour. She'll perform 3 shows at BC Place to an estimated 160,000 fans. But the energy extends far beyond the stadium. Neethu Garcha is in Vancouver, where Swiftie fever is high. Neethu, the crowds are starting to build.
They are. It is packed here, Carolyn. Since this morning, we have seen people dressing up and getting in front of the venue to take photos, and now there are multiple long lineups of people waiting to get inside. You can see the excitement here is palpable. Everybody dressed up and ready for the show. Now, the Vancouver Police Department expects for there to be more than 250,000 people here in the city's Stadium District, and they plan to deploy 700 officers over the course of the weekend. And with the Cirque du Soleil show nearby, as well as a pair of Canucks home games, they expect this to be one of, if not the busiest weekend the city has ever seen.
Romeo, save me, I've been feeling so alone.
Across the border from Washington State, these 4 sisters are on a journey to live out their own fairy tale.
It's safe to say that there will be tears shed tonight from at least the 4 of us.
We're all very, very lucky to watch her tonight.
A lot of people struggle to get tickets. They're very expensive depending on the seats that you get, and it's just she's a very big artist at the moment, so it's really hard to get tickets.
They're among thousands of fans who've traveled to see one of Taylor Swift's final 3 performances of the Eras Tour.
Here, I got one for you.
With nearly 160,000 fans expected to fill BC Place, Vancouver's economy is getting a Swift-sized boost to the tune of more than $157 million.
Anything to drink for you this morning, ma'am? I was waiting for this more than a year.
Welcome news for small businesses like this one.
We are going to do almost half of the month sale in 3 nights. That's our expectation, because we're struggling like all other small business right now in Vancouver. It is very hard time. Have a good one.
Transit services are ramping up to support the crowds, and the transit map got a friendship bracelet facelift. Even the Heritage Steam Clock is getting in on the Swift action, churning out Taylor's hits every 15 minutes. On the North Shore, the famed Capilano Suspension Bridge is glamming up too, with the Fearless Friendship Bracelet hanging above Lynn Canyon and its enchantments, from a Tay-top to a swift walk.
We've been trying to get to it for all year long. It was amazing. Just to catch the last one was really exciting for us.
It's inspirational, and I'm just so proud of her. I'm going with my mom, and I'm so excited.
Now, this is the biggest concert series in history, and it all comes to an end here this weekend. For those without tickets, Vancouver still does feel like a Swiftie paradise, with more than 60 events planned to celebrate the end of an era for this tour. Carolyn?
Itu Garcha in Vancouver. Enjoy yourself tonight. And that is Global National for this Friday night. I'm Carolyn Jarvis. It's only fitting that tonight's Your Canada is Vancouver, or Swiftcouver, as it's being called this week. The city has 13 signs lit up to celebrate the final stop of Swift's tour. Thanks for watching. Hope you'll join us again tomorrow. Have a great night.